If you haven't cruised since 2024, or even since early 2025, the ship you step onto in 2026 is going to feel different. Not in a bad way necessarily, but different in ways that will catch you off guard if nobody tells you about them first. Royal Caribbean, Carnival, Norwegian, and MSC have all made significant rule changes in the past 12 months. Some of them affect what you can bring on board. Some affect how you pay. Some affect where you can go on the ship and what it costs to be there. And a few of them, honestly, are going to annoy people who have been sailing the same line for years and assumed nothing had changed. We've gone through the updated policies across all 4 major lines. We've spoken to recent passengers. And we've put together the changes that actually matter, the ones that will affect your experience, your wallet, and your planning, right here on Cruise Compendium. If you have a cruise booked for 2026, this one is not optional viewing. E-cruise industry came out of the pandemic restart period in 2022 and 2023 with a very different financial picture than it went in with. Fuel costs had risen. Labor costs had risen. The price of food, supplies, and port fees had risen, and the lines had taken on significant debt during the years the ships weren't sailing. At the same time, demand came roaring back. Ships were full. Waitlists were real. The lines discovered, fairly quickly, that passengers would pay more, accept more add-on charges, and tolerate more policy restrictions than they had before the pandemic. The market had shifted in the cruise line's favor, so they pushed. What we're seeing in 2026 is the settled version of that push. The experimental charges have become permanent. The trial policy changes have become standard. The things that used to be included have, in many cases, moved behind a paywall. Knowing this context matters, because understanding why these rules exist makes it much easier to plan around them. Let's start with drinks, because this is where the changes affect the most people and where the most confusion currently lives. Royal Caribbean updated their alcohol bring-on-board policy in 2025, and it remains in force for 2026. Each passenger is permitted to bring 1 bottle of wine or champagne, 700 ml maximum, at embarkation only. Not at port stops. Not in a bag checked at the terminal. In your carry-on at the point of boarding. Beer and spirits brought on board by passengers are confiscated, held, and returned at the end of the sailing. This policy has always existed in some form, but it is now enforced significantly more consistently than it was before 2023. Carnival's policy is similar, 2 bottles of wine per stateroom at embarkation, but they have added a corkage fee in 2025 for wine consumed in the dining room that was not purchased on board. If you bring your bottle to dinner, you are charged a fee to open it at the table. The amount varies but sits around $15 per bottle on most ships. Bringing wine to your cabin and drinking it there carries no fee. Bringing it to the restaurant now does. Norwegian's Free at Sea drinks package has been updated again. The base tier now covers a smaller selection of brands than it did in 2024. If your expectation was built around what the package covered 2 years ago, check the current included list before you sail. Several popular spirit brands have moved to the premium tier, which requires an upgrade charge per person per day. MSC has introduced a new policy that is genuinely positive. Their Aria and Yacht Club fare inclusions now cover specialty coffee across all onboard venues, not just the main restaurants. That's a meaningful change for regular coffee drinkers who were previously paying per cup despite being on an all-inclusive fare. Gratuities. The most reliably controversial topic in cruise travel. And in 2026, there are changes across multiple lines that passengers need to know about before they see the first onboard statement. Royal Caribbean increased their automatic daily gratuity rate in 2025, and that rate holds into 2026. For standard cabin passengers, it sits at $18 per person per day. For suite guests, it is $21 per person per day. On a 7-night sailing for 2 people in a standard cabin, that's $252 added to your account before you've spent a single dollar voluntarily. Prepaying gratuities at the time of booking, which locks in the rate active at booking rather than the rate active at sailing, is worth considering if you expect the rate to continue rising. Carnival adjusted their gratuity structure in late 2025. They now apply different rates depending on the cabin category, with a tiered system where suite and higher category cabin guests pay a higher daily rate than interior and ocean view passengers. The standard rate is $16 per person per day. Suite guests pay $20. Norwegian's service charges remain at the higher end of the market. The all-in service charge for most sailings is $20 per person per day in 2026. For passengers sailing in the Haven, Norwegian's premium ship-within-a-ship concept, the service charge rises to $25 per person per day. For a couple in the Haven on a 7-night sailing, that's $350 in service charges alone, before any spending. MSC continues to handle gratuities differently from the American lines. For passengers booking through North American travel agents, gratuities are often presented as a per-sailing flat fee rather than a daily charge, and in many cases they are included in promoted fares. If you are comparing MSC pricing to the other 3 lines, make sure you're comparing the fully loaded all-in cost, because the gratuity presentation can make MSC look cheaper than the comparison is actually showing. Quick pause here, because the changes that are coming up next are the ones that have genuinely surprised long-term cruisers this year. Dress codes, technology requirements, and a suite access policy that has caused more complaints in the cruise community than almost anything else in recent memory. If you haven't subscribed to Cruise Compendium yet, do it now before we go any further. We publish honest, practical cruise information every week. No sponsored opinions, just the stuff you actually need to know. Subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and let's keep going. His is the change that has generated more frustration in the cruise community than almost anything else we've covered in the past year. And it is worth explaining carefully, because the details matter. Royal Caribbean has been steadily expanding what they call the suite class experience on their larger ships, the Oasis, Wonder, and Icon class vessels in particular. In 2025 and carrying into 2026, several areas of these ships that were previously accessible to all passengers have been moved behind a suite-only or paid access barrier. The solarium, the adults-only indoor pool area that used to be open to all passengers in a standard cabin, is now suite-only during peak hours on certain ships. Non-suite passengers can access it during off-peak times, but the most desirable morning and afternoon windows are reserved. Passengers who have sailed Royal Caribbean for years and expected the solarium to be available to them as it always was are finding the experience significantly different. Norwegian has extended the Haven's physical footprint on several ships, meaning the private sun deck and restaurant that were once located in areas visible from public decks are now entirely enclosed. This is partly a design upgrade for Haven guests, but it also means the ships feel more visibly stratified. There are parts of the vessel that simply do not exist for most of the passengers on it. Carnival has taken a different approach. They've introduced what they call their Carnival Excel and Carnival Celebration Premium Zones, paid day pass areas on the upper decks with reserved loungers, enhanced service, and priority poolside service. These are not suite exclusive. Anyone can purchase a day pass. But the areas do represent previously open deck space that now costs money to use. MSC's Yacht Club remains the most clearly defined premium product, completely self-contained, genuinely excellent, and priced accordingly. What's changed in 2026 is that MSC has introduced a Yacht Club Lite option on some vessels, a less fully inclusive version at a lower price point that gives access to the private pool and restaurant, but not the full butler and priority service. It is a new tier in a system that already had multiple tiers, and it has caused some confusion about what exactly is and isn't included at each level. In 2026, the cruise line's apps are no longer optional extras. They are how the ships operate. And if you board without having used the app before sailing, you are going to spend the first half of your first day catching up on things other passengers sorted out at home. Royal Caribbean's app, the Royal Caribbean International app, now handles check-in, boarding passes, dining reservations, entertainment bookings, shore excursion purchases, the daily schedule, onboard account management, and ship-to-guest messaging. On the newest ships, it also controls in-cabin features including lighting and temperature on some deck categories. If you do not download and set up the app before you board, you will be standing in a queue at guest services for things that take 30 seconds in the app. Carnival has made their Hub app the primary channel for all onboard communication. The texting feature within the app, which allows you to message other passengers in your group, now costs a small fee per device per day on most sailings. The app itself is free. The social messaging function inside it is not. This catches people off guard. If you are traveling with family or a group and expect to coordinate via phone during the sailing, factor in the messaging fee or agree on meeting points the old-fashioned way. Norwegian has fully integrated their app with the Free at Sea package redemption system. If you have Free at Sea inclusions, dining credits, drinks, excursion credits, you must activate and manage them through the app before and during sailing. Guests who have not set up the app ahead of time sometimes find their credits are harder to apply once on board, particularly for pre-bookable restaurant reservations, which fill up fast on sea days. The practical advice for all 4 lines is the same. Download the app, create your account, upload your documents, make your reservations. Do all of it at least 2 weeks before you board. Not at the port, not on the ship, before you leave home. We've put together a full 2026 policy update guide on the Cruise Compendium website. Each major line covered separately, with the specific rule changes laid out clearly so you can check exactly what applies to your sailing before you board. Link is in the description. Free. Worth reading before you pack. We've got dress codes and smoking policy changes still to come. And one more update that is going to affect a lot of people who don't even realize it applies to them. Dress codes on cruise ships have been evolving for years, generally in the direction of relaxing. But 2026 has seen a few adjustments that go the other way, and a few that clarify policies that were previously vague enough to cause arguments at the dining room door. Royal Caribbean updated their main dining room dress guidelines in 2025. The formal nights that used to require suits and evening wear have been officially rebranded as Royal Night. A smart casual standard is now stated as the expectation rather than formal attire. Tuxedos and gowns are still welcomed. Jeans, shorts, and flip-flops are still not permitted in the main dining room on any evening. The change is that the line has stopped calling evenings formal in a way that led some passengers to feel underdressed in a blazer. Smart casual, collared shirts, dresses, trousers, is explicitly the standard now, and the pressure around evening dress has genuinely reduced. Carnival has maintained their smart casual dining room standard, but added clearer language about what is not permitted in public areas of the ship during evening hours. Clothing with offensive language or imagery is now more actively enforced than it was previously. This is not a new rule. It has existed for years. But the enforcement is more consistent on recent sailings, and a small number of passengers have had issues at the dining room entrance as a result. Norwegian has updated their conduct policy around pool deck behavior, specifically relating to reserving sun loungers. On their larger ships, unattended towels on loungers will now be removed by crew after 30 minutes, with a new tagging system introduced to flag loungers that have been empty for the permitted time. This was a policy before. What's new is that it's being enforced, which is either a long overdue change or an annoyance depending on your usual pool deck behavior. On all 4 lines, and this is important, the policies around vaping in cabins and on balconies have been tightened. Vaping is now explicitly covered by the same rules that govern cigarette smoking. Cabin balconies are smoke and vape-free zones on all 4 major lines. Violations are taken seriously, and fines have been applied on recent sailings. If this affects you, check the designated smoking areas on your ship in advance. They are smaller and fewer than they used to be. There is one more change in 2026 that has received almost no attention in mainstream cruise coverage, but is going to affect a significant number of passengers, particularly those who sail regularly and have built habits around how they interact with the ship's pricing systems. Dynamic pricing for onboard purchases. Royal Caribbean and Norwegian have both introduced or expanded dynamic pricing models for certain onboard categories in 2025 and 2026. Specialty restaurant reservations, spa treatments, and shore excursion bookings now adjust in price based on demand, similar to how airline seat prices move. A reservation at a specialty restaurant booked 60 days before sailing may cost significantly less than the same reservation booked 3 days before sailing when the ship is full and demand is high. For passengers who plan ahead and use the app to book in advance, this is an opportunity. For passengers who prefer to decide onboard spontaneously, this is a cost increase. The same dinner that cost $40 per person in advance might cost $65 the night before because the restaurant is nearly full. The practical implication is straightforward. If you know you want a specialty dinner, Book it before you board. If you want a spa treatment on a sea day, the most popular time, book it at the same time you book your cabin. The price you see when you reserve in advance is almost always lower than the price you'll see when you try to book the same thing on board. This is not controversial as a business practice. It is entirely standard across the travel industry. But it is new enough in the cruise context that many regular sailors are being caught out by it, paying more than they expected for things they've always just arranged when they felt like it. Plan ahead. The apps make this easy. The savings are real. The cruise industry in 2026 is not worse than it was. In many ways, it's better. The ships are newer, the food has improved across most lines, the entertainment investment has grown, and the destinations are more diverse than they've ever been. But it is different. And the difference matters most to the passengers who board with expectations built on sailings from 2 or 3 years ago, who assume the same rules, the same inclusions, the same experience they remember, and then find something changed. That gap between expectation and reality is what this channel exists to close. The solarium might work differently now. The gratuity will be higher than you remember. The app is not optional. The drinks package covers less than it did. And the specialty restaurant will cost you more if you wait until you're hungry to book it. Know these things before you board, and none of them will ruin your trip. That's the point of all of this. If there was something in this video that surprised you, or something you wish you'd known before a recent sailing, drop it in the comments. We read everyone. And the conversation in the comments on videos like this is genuinely one of the best sources of up-to-date cruise information anywhere. Give this video a like if it was useful. It helps other cruisers find it before they board. And subscribe to Cruise Compendium for a new honest breakdown every single week. Safe sailing.